there, I'm Lisa. Some of you may have seen my last video where I gave a tour of some of my resin-covered collage work. And thank you so much for your wonderful compliments. Today what I thought I would do is show you some of the other artwork that I've made over the past 5 or 6 years, which is not collage, but it is the evolution of my style, which has led me to where I am today, making cut paper and glued collage art.
Always remember, if you ain't first, you're last.
If you ain't first, you're last.
Growing up, my parents instilled in me this notion that it was almost impossible to make a living in the arts. Only 1 in a million will ever make it. And at the time, in the 1970s and 80s, before the invention of the internet, this was a pretty responsible warning for a parent to give a child. I've always loved making art, but for the first 40 years of my life, I would say my relationship to it has always been a struggle. Somewhere in my mind was always this idea that I dragged along from childhood, that unless I was really great, unless my art was amazing, then there was really no point to persevering. And judging from my attempts, I was like, oh, well, this is obvious. I'm not that 1 in a million who's going to make it, who's going to be a great success. So why even bother? Unlike Will Ferrell's character in the movie,
I did just like you told me. If you ain't first, you're last.
Rather than using my parents' words as motivation to try to be the best, my personality changed it to being defeated. It was never going to happen. I wasn't going to be good enough, so I may as well quit. This is an old sketchbook I found that I must have done in high school. These are some watercolors. This is a direct copy from Babette Cole, famous children's book author and illustrator. And I would practice just watercolor techniques, copying the work of artists. Here's another one I did. She's fabulous, her artwork. Although I can copy it, I would never play it off as my own or want to copy someone's style as my own. So I was like, okay, you can copy it, but you don't have it in you to come up with this amazing work on your own. So for many years, I put art aside, and I endured a constant feeling of longing to create, but always feeling that I would never be a good enough artist. So why bother? I have always been drawn to a very simplistic, minimalist art style, especially from children's books from the 70s, 80s, early 90s. I love that white background with the colorful shapes, with sharp edges. I can remember being a kid and going to visit my local library, and I can remember how it smelled, and I can remember the sound of the book as I would open these hard-covered children's books and hear that crinkling of that clear, thin, transparent wrapper that covered all of the hardcover books. Authors like Eric Carle, Leo Leone, loved their work, and this is collage as well. Eric Carle, of course, a famous collage artist of children's books. I mean, these are just fabulous, all done with collage. How beautiful that is. so simple. I love the simplicity of it. Another one I really like is Taro Gomi. Just how minimal and clean it looks. Just can break it all down into shapes. And this is, it looks like watercolor. I love the white background. I've always loved white background with color on top. And growing up, I also remember my parents had this coffee table book by the Austrian artist Hundertwasser. And I must have spent hours of my childhood flipping through that book with these colorful artworks that were on black paper. And Hundertwasser used a metallic, I don't know if it was a paint or I don't know what it was, but it was metallic silver and gold. And you could see that in the book. It was actually shiny. Those sections were shiny. And that was, to me, was like, wow, that was so magical. What a marvel. And I found this calendar. My parents gave me this calendar from 1985 of some of Hundertwasser's art. And it's so colorful. To me, this is just stunning, stunning artwork. This is my jam right here, Hundertwasser. I can see those influences in the artwork I do now and the artwork that I'm attracted to. So, how did I go from denying myself as an artist to finding my style? It was a long road. It was a long road. Throughout my 20s and 30s, I was a classroom teacher. And I vividly remember sitting in staff meetings and drawing on the agenda little teardrop houses, little trees, doodling in the margins of the agenda. One day I decided that I would buy myself a 72 marker set of Prismacolor brush tip markers. Cut myself up some pieces of paper and started drawing the same doodles that I was doing in staff meetings on these little pieces of paper. I would just do these simple shapes, the same little houses, and I would draw these over and over and over. I have so many of these little. This is on marker paper. And I also got a big set of shiny gel pens and metallic markers, I think from Winsor Newton, just like Hundertwasser with his metallic art. It just did it for me. I absolutely loved that sparkle and shine. So these are the first works that I did in color in my style. I just leaned into the simplicity. It was so freeing to be able just to draw shapes, focus on just shape and color, and not try to make it look like something real, to look like it exists in reality, to try to copy perfectly, because that had always defeated me. So just letting go of that made it fun. I could draw one after another, even though it was such similar shapes. I never got bored. This is one of the bigger pieces I did, a 12 by 12 inch with lots of metallic marker. So as I continued making these little marker drawings, I wanted to incorporate new shapes than the ones that I was just getting out of my imagination. So while I was on vacation that year in Nova Scotia, I remember drawing these little pen and ink drawings of beach plants just to get new shapes, new inspiration for shapes and compositions. So I did marker for a while. Then I moved on with the same style, only now in watercolor. And because I love the shine, I bought metallic watercolors, and these are fantastic watercolors. I think the brand is called Collage. I'm not too sure, I'll check. And I will link it below. And again, same style, but now in watercolor. you can see this sort of children's book style that I love. The white background, the ground on the bottom with the trees on top of the ground. When gouache was all the rage on YouTube, I bought myself a small set of gouache paints and I tried my style in gouache. And this is one of the things I came up with. And it is quite different than watercolor. I learned how to make these cute little accordion books. These were really fun to make, and see my little world as you turn the pages. I love making this marble paper. I'm going to do a video on how I make the marble paper. I love making these little one-of-a-kind art projects. If you're interested in learning how to make those, I could do a video on how to make those accordion books. Then I decided to try my style in acrylic. This was the very first one I did in acrylic. I look at this now and I was like, I just want to continue. This isn't finished. I could keep going and make this look really nice. But anyway, that was my first attempt. So though I did enjoy working in all of the mediums, by the time I got to painting with acrylic, I was really missing the sharp, clean edges that I've always loved, that graphic style. I couldn't figure out a way to get that in acrylic paint like I had been getting it in marker until I thought, paper. It occurred to me, paper, if I cut paper, which would give me the cleanest, sharpest edge with just using scissors. And the rest is history. I feel like I've finally found my medium that I really am drawn to and I can really manipulate to get the results that I've always been looking for. I love the intricacy of cutting. I love the building up of the layers, the clean lines. Collage takes me back to that happy place, sitting in the library amongst the hardcover children's books. This is a background painted in acrylic, paper, pen, gel pen for the sparkle, and covered in resin, which gives it that nice shiny, it adds to the shiny feeling. Not only do you have the metallic in the art itself, but you also have that shine from the resin, which I really love. For years, I'm making these houses and these little worlds, and it sort of occurred to me, who's living in these little worlds? And here he is. Here's one of them. I have about 5 or 6 of these little guys in different colors. You start school at 5 or 6 years old and you're asked to bring in a package of markers, a pair of scissors, and glue amongst your school supplies. And I find it interesting to think that I have ended up today using those mediums that I was using as a child when I lost my confidence in myself as an artist. I had to go way back to the beginning when I interpreted that being a successful artist is for 1 in a million people and that it is almost impossible to make a living in the arts. I had to go back to that time and let my art evolve from where I left off. And it was only when I let go of any expectations from my artwork that it would look a certain way, that it would get me something, that I truly fell in love with making art. And I just leaned into the basics of making shapes and using colors that I loved, that I truly began to love the process of creating. And the concept of 1 in a million is so silly. We don't need to be the best to be successful.
You came in, you said, if you ain't first, you're last.
But that doesn't make any sense at all. First, you're last. You can be second, you can be third, fourth, hell, you can even be fifth.
You make art because you love the process. And if you're finding you don't love it, and you haven't yet done so, try collage. Maybe it will free you like it did for me. And please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe if you'd like more information on my art or collage art.